some firsthand use with Mathcad and Creo during that, and also some participation in the first robotics and STEM, which is now STEAM. MRC, a little bit on MRC. We've been a partner of PTC's now for over 10 years. We started as primarily a support group handling support renewals and maintenance, reactivating customers who've been falling off that wagon and helping them get back to up to date with their software and take advantage of the latest and greatest. We had great success with that and were quickly brought on as a full-time partner, specifically around Mathcad, and became a full sales group. We currently work with over 26,000 companies all over North America. We can be found working with companies in every industry. We are the #1 Mathcad reseller and major support resource. Through Tim's presentation, I want you to know that anything you do see, we can have up and active in less than 72 hours for you from purchase to installation. Unlike other vendors, MRC is centrally located, meaning that we're all under one roof. That allows us to increase our speed and response to your business and support needs. And if anyone's interested, we are also located within an hour's drive of PTC. So anyone looking to leverage online or on-site training at PTC, we're a great resource for that as well. So Tim has been with PTC for 2 years. He's a graduate of University of UMass Amherst with his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Tim, and he's going to walk us through today's introduction to Mathcad Prime. Tim, it's all yours.
Thanks, Matt. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thanks, Tim.
Great. Awesome. So today, I am going to go through how we do conversions, how we convert legacy Mathcad files to Mathcad Prime format, and highlight some of the best practices you're going to want to take as you do make that switch from 15 or 14 or even earlier into Prime. I think it's fair to say some of you guys on the phone are using a dated version of the software. Perhaps 14 or 15 is a pretty common version platform in our user base, and each and every day customers are making that transition from 15 to Prime. The latest version of Prime is Prime 3.1. It's been in the market about 12 months. And I think there are some common misconceptions about the process of converting from 15 to Prime, and maybe some wet feet as it comes to that. But I'm going to hopefully show you some tips and tricks here to make that transition as smooth as possible. So what you're starting with is a Mathcad 15 file. Maybe you have 1, maybe you have 10, maybe you have hundreds or even thousands depending on your utilization of Mathcad. And you're very familiar with Mathcad 15, but you want to be able to open this up in Mathcad Prime. And let me pull Mathcad Prime out from behind. And you'll notice a new user interface. But it's not as simple as just file open over here when you have a file created in the legacy version. When we made this switch to Mathcad Prime, we revamped the entire architecture, kind of the building blocks of the software underneath. And with that requires us to have a new file format. We did build a converter. So for example, if I have this is the name of this file that's open here in 15. And if I just take it and try to open it in Mathcad Prime, it gives me an error saying this file type is not supported. Please use the converter so that you can open it. And the converter, so if I look at just Mathcad Prime, the converter, you can find it on the Input-Output tab. And what we do is we just click on the converter, and a dialog, it popped up on my other monitor, but a little dialog box will open up. And you just go and you navigate, just in your Windows Explorer to the file or files that you would like to convert. This converter can do one at a time, or I've done up to 1,000 worksheets in one conversion, just taking an entire folder of files, putting it in, and pressing convert. Now when I press this convert button, the conversion actually requires you to have Mathcad 15 installed on your system. You're going to need maintenance release M010 or later. And when I click this convert button, it's actually going to open up Mathcad 15 behind the scenes and do a little bit of formatting to it so that the converter can run and open it in Prime. So I'm going to click convert. We get a little status here that says in progress, and it's already done. It'll let you know that it's converted. And you're also presented with a conversion log. So it went through and it found 198 regions in this Mathcad 15 file. And out of the 198, call it 200, 20 of them, or roughly 10%, have differences. Every single region that has any type of difference, whether it's a display difference, a formatting difference, a calculation difference, any region will have what we're going to call an annotation on it so that you know exactly which regions you need to check and validate and verify before deploying this certified version on the Prime side. So it's found here, and I'll show you in a bit, but this is all captured in an XML file or really just a text file. So when we do this conversion, we're saving a file that lets you know all 15 unsupported formatting and 5 display differences. But let's actually open it up in Prime. So it places it in the exact same folder where your 15 file was. So if I go ahead and open it up, here it comes. And it's a 16-page file. The very first thing, 2 things you're going to want to do when you do the conversion. Number one is, and this is actually really just a personal preference, but it's kind of a Mathcad Prime default, is to turn on the grid. If you're familiar with Mathcad 15, you know it's just kind of a blank sheet of paper. There's no ability to show this grid. I prefer this look. It's kind of a familiar engineering paper document style. So I turn that on, and the next thing you're going to want to do is press calculate. One thing you should know about all versions of Mathcad is Mathcad does not calculate on open. That means that if I save a file, close it, and when I open it, it's opening that final saved state. It's not going to calculate itself. And there's a couple new things with the engine, mainly around labels. And what I mean by labels is we can see a pound force per inch squared or a PSI here, but it's kind of hard to tell that this is a unit. But if I go ahead and calculate this entire worksheet, the Mathcad Prime engine now has labeling. So it comes up here. If you keep an eye right here on this labels, there's a dash right here. If I click in pounds force, it knows that that's a unit. It knows that G is a variable, right? So the Mathcad Prime, when you press calculate, now Mathcad Prime's engine has gotten a chance to go through every region, assign its labels, run its calculations, okay? Now, as far as formatting goes, this one's not too bad. Let me pull it, no, I'll leave it as it is. But, so, one thing that's new with Prime that we didn't have in 15 is this text block. Now, a text block spans margin to margin. And we added this because with Prime, it's more of a document interface. So rather than just inserting a text box like this that can kind of be dragged around anywhere, and I can make it as wide or as narrow as I choose, we also have text blocks. So let me insert another one of those. And that spans margin to margin. And actually, as I add space here, it'll push everything down below it. So something like this, if this is something that you wanted in a text block, you could go ahead and just cut and paste it into one of those. So now, if you had a long paragraph, it actually behaves like you would expect a paragraph to in another word processing software. So that's one thing that you can do for large chunks of text, is pull it out from a text box like this and push it into a text box, a block, excuse me. Now, another thing to keep in mind is the positioning of this, or I should say, I have moved that one a little bit. The positioning of this, how many grid lines over and how many grid lines down are we? That is directly correlated to its exact position in the Mathcad 15 file. So, the Mathcad 15, the actual margin of the page was the very, very left edge of the screen, and it was very common for users to just start, it actually looked like this, if I go into page view. It's kind of unnatural to start working way over on the left side, so many people, like in this case, come in and start typing here. Well, since the margin of the page is actually on this very edge, all of your text and regions may be kind of indented, if you will. So in this case, you can come in and highlight here and just move them all over if you do want them aligned with the margin. Or, better yet, before you do that conversion, go into the Mathcad 15 file, press Control-A, get everything, and pull it all the way over to the left, and then run the conversion, and you'll see things come in better formatted. Just kind of a difference between the working in a draft whiteboard environment like this versus having the more document view with the kind of the gray area here to make it more comfortable working in the center of the screen. So the formatting, you're going to maybe want to play around with it, pull things to the left, use text blocks, the new functionality where applicable in cases like this where you just have bullets. We do have math formatting. We can add in bullets and numbering and things like that, so you may want to change that. But more importantly, you're concerned that your calculations are correct and accurate. A page break seems to have been funny here, so if we right-click, we can just remove space to pull everything up. But we've run calculate, so Mathcad's engine's gone through and done the labeling. Maybe you want to resize some of these, just, again, little tiny formatting things. But if we get down here, we get to our first, what we call annotations. So I can clear them. I'm not going to do it yet because I haven't reviewed them all. But every single region, and we give you the arrow, and then we give you a line in the margin so you don't scroll past them. Those 20 regions that the converter highlighted are all annotated. So in this case, we lost a subscript. So AW here, AW, the subscript was lost, so I'm just going to go ahead and add that back in. All right, so that one's taken care of. Come down a little further. Again, we lost this subscript, so I can type back in CW. All right, now all of our functions came over just fine. Let's see what else. Our range variable came in, text, maybe you want this in a text block, right? So I'm going to X that, and cut it and paste it in. All right, and then we can pull this up a little. And again, here's kind of where you see that maybe you really wanted this over here, right? More subscripts, so this is TA. I'm going to replace that with T sub A, and I can do the same thing for theta sub A. So you're going to have some slight formatting to clean up. And let's see, what else? Okay, another subscript. I'm not going to fix all the subscripts just because that gets a little repetitive. Well, let's come down a bit further. We can see images came over fine. Matrices, we present matrices a little bit differently in Mathcad, just something to get used to. We use the square brackets, so we can see feet and degrees. All right, and now we get to graphs. Graphs are, a graph is a graph, obviously, but in Mathcad 15, we actually didn't support units with graphs. So you'll notice here, this deflection, or angle, whatever it is here, angle of twist, we actually had to divide out by degrees. But you'll notice in Mathcad Prime, we actually have placeholders for the units. So I can get rid of this degree and actually put it as my unit, and I'll do the same for feet. Put it in the unit placeholder so that the engine picks up feet as the unit of X. And maybe we want to move this around a little, make it a little bigger, and maybe transparent background. I tend to like that. Again, there's a unit of PSI that we can now pull out. Same thing goes here for feet. All right. We have a subscript lost. We have another subscript lost. Here we have, let's see, the display of the exponential notation has changed. The accuracy has not been affected. All right, so we have the same number, the same value. It's just displayed in a different way. So if you want to see it in engineering format, we can do that. If we want to see it in decimal format, we can do that. And it's a really small number, so we haven't even gotten there yet. That's probably not the best way to do it. I'm going to put it in scientific and go out to 3 decimal points. That looks like a subscript lost. Again, here, let's get rid of these and put PSI. So you're going down anytime you're seeing an annotation, you're reading what the specific message is. Is sigma x here really important to you? You know, if there are 20, that's a very manageable number. I've seen 1, I've seen 50. But again, 90% of the annotations that you're going to find are just simple little formats, or maybe, you know, use the units placeholder here. The calculation is correct, it's just displayed differently. And most of these are stemmed just from the fact that, you know, it's a different file format. We have some different standards and defaults in Mathcad Prime, and we're just letting you know that you need to be aware of them.
Hey, Tim,
so go ahead.
You know, a common question that comes up a lot is, now that we're making edits to the converted file in Prime, you know, how and does that affect our Mathcad 15 data?
Okay, good point. So that's kind of a common misconception, and that question, I hear it a lot, and it sounds like you do too. So a customer's using 15, and they're thinking about transitioning to Prime, so they run through this converter, and they might be concerned, well, what happens to my original file? I don't want anything to happen to that in case I ever need to go back to it. And the good thing is, actually, I'll open up the file here, is that we keep the original file untouched. So here's that file. Here's the Mathcad Prime file, the Mathcad worksheet. And then I also mentioned I'll actually open this up. And let me open it with, I'll just open it with Notepad. I hope that's one here, yeah. Here is that log that shows up in the converter. So there is any of the annotations get logged in this file. You have your original file, and if I open it up, there it is, just completely intact. And now you have the file that I have open here. So don't worry, nothing's happening to your old file. We're tracking everything that has been changed. So even if I do come up here and click clear annotations, now I don't know region by region what has changed. You still have that XML file to go back to. Let me open it again with Notepad. You still have this file to go back to know exactly what is changed between all of these. All right. So keep coming down. Again, this one has a ton of plots, so it's probably not worth me changing every single one of these. But again, this is something, a best practice on the Prime side, so that the engine recognizes these correctly. We want to get them in the units placeholder. So once you've cleaned up the formatting, again, maybe moving things around left to right, run the calculation, let Mathcad Prime get a chance to try and calculate everything in there. Fix your units on the plots. Add in some subscripts if you have them, and they may have disappeared upon conversion. Utilize the text block where you're writing long, lengthy descriptions or paragraphs, whatever you are writing. And that's going to take care of 90–95% of any issue you would ever have. Continue to clean up. Now, another thing that kind of comes up here is you have a lot of blank space, and that has to do with maybe, see this dotted line, the dotted black line between the two pages. That means that a page break was inserted on the Mathcad 15 side. Now, Sometimes you'll kind of notice how this one before I moved it was overlapped just like this. So the page break would come in here, again moving everything down. So we can use this right click. Let me grab this graph and bring it down a little bit here. So if I insert a page break there, I can use the right click and remove space. Sometimes you'll have just blank pages that you wanna bring things back together. So quickly remove space just to get the document back in one piece. Some more plots here, and then we get to the end. So with this one, we didn't have any calculation differences. We had a couple display differences, but the numbers were the same. We have a bunch of plots that I need to continue to clean up. But this one actually, overall, pretty smooth. Again, each one of these, and again, this is a 14-page document. You may have a 100-page document. You may have a 5-page document. So the time, I would say, is definitely related to the length of your documents in terms of cleaning them up and just getting them in a printable form, a form that maybe you would hand to your boss.
Hey, Tim. Matt here. I'm wondering, so if a customer is comfortable with, the Mathcad 15 interface, I know I've heard a lot of people who, look at this new ribbon UI and are a little intimidated to, possibly be learning something new. Is there anything that can help them, or any tips or tricks you might be able to pass out there?
Yes, so certainly the ribbon, if I come to 15, the ribbon in Prime just the interface is much different. This is drop-down menus inside of drop-down menus, whereas Mathcad Prime is based on the ribbon, and the whole idea behind it is if you're on the right tab, all the functionality is 1-2 clicks away. This might be a little overwhelming or uncomfortable for someone that's been using the older version of the software for a very long time. If you're looking for a particular function, I would suggest pulling out this All Functions menu. You can also do that by pressing F2. And in here, if you knew exactly where it was in the file structure, the drop-down structure of 15, and you can't find it here in one of these drop-downs for whatever reason, just come over here and look it up. So, for example, if you were looking up values in a matrix, here's my VLOOKUP function. Pretty much every single function is going to be exactly the same and accept the same exact arguments, but if you ever forget, what does VLOOKUP require, I can press F1 while I'm hovering over this. It popped up on my other screen again. But the help is context sensitive, and here it takes me to all the lookup functions. Again, that was hovering over this and pressing F1 brings me to this. So it's going to take just a couple tries to get comfortable with this UI. I know that solve blocks are inserted on the Math tab, and I know if I want to insert a matrix or do a transpose, I come into the Matrices and Tables tab. If I want to insert a plot, go to Plots. But this function lookup menu, again, to pull that up, if you're on function, you go All Functions. That's going to help you find anything. Help Center can also be accessed here if you want just general help homepage, and then you can kind of come in and narrow down based on what you're doing. And the final thing that I recommend and is a great learning tool is anything on this Resources tab. We have links to the PTC community where you can connect with other users and converse about best practices and things like that. We have a whole PDF of keyboard shortcuts. There's a couple keyboard shortcuts that have changed that you're going to have to get used to. For example, subscript. It used to be Control period. Now it's Control dash. It's just, Control dash. Something you're going to have to live with and get used to, but if you're ever wondering, what's the keyboard shortcut for exponent? Okay, that one's pretty straightforward. It's caret, but there are some ones that maybe like If you're doing a derivative, Control-Shift-D, you want to learn that. And then the final thing is e-learning. So e-learning is self-paced, online training. And again, just to show that one more time, right on the Resources tab, if you click Learning Connector, it's going to launch. It's going to direct you to the e-learning site. And if you have an account, you just come down here and log in. Let's see. Go ahead and log in, and then you can come find training. I'll look up a course. Well, it's already on Mathcad. Anything that is Prime is related to all versions. We just separate them out based on what courses we released at what time. So for courses that we released while Prime 3 was active, we can go do a search for that. We'll wait for some answers to come back. So if you want to take a course on plotting, for example, it'll give you some demo lab files to download, walk you through 2D plotting. There's videos for each module, and then there's also the picks and clicks on the step-by-step, exactly what you need to do. And then at the end, there are check your knowledges, simple little quizzes to make sure you grasped exactly what the training team wants you to grasp in terms of key areas of plotting. And there's design of experiments, programming, symbolics and solving, units, integrations with other softwares. And let's see, if I go to 2.0, some of the older courses, data exchange, reading data in and out. Any questions you have on that, just come into e-learning. It's a great resource, and again, it's all self-paced. So you're not dedicating 2 consecutive days for an instructor-led course. I have a question on programming. Okay, come into e-learning and go through the module and learn exactly how it's done.
That's great. Yeah, I must say, Tim, we have a lot of customers who pick up e-learning, and they love the benefit that they give them, and the ability, especially for new users, to pick it up. So I was just going to say, we're a little past our half-hour allotted time, but we do have some questions here in the queue, and I was hoping we could just go over a couple. If people don't mind sticking around for a few more moments. All right. So Tim, looks like the first question that came in was during when we're going through our annotations, is there an ability just to clear some annotations, or is there only the clear all annotations ability?
There is only the ability to clear all annotations. It's unfortunate that we can't, I can't check them off as I go through 1 through 20. I would recommend just kind of doing them in order from top to bottom, just so you know where you are in terms of reviewing. But there is only the ability to clear them all.
Okay. So another question that came up is concerning text blocks. If doing a find and replace function, will it work for Greek and mathematical symbols in the text blocks?
Will it work?
Yeah, if we were to say, it sounds like if we were to do a find and replace maybe the theta symbol for maybe variable x, would it recognize that in text blocks as well?
Yeah, it would, but the trick would be getting the theta into this find. So I can't type, I know if we're talking about math, Q Control G is the conversion to get from the Roman to the Greek. So you'd have to paste in theta from your character map. There's no direct way to just type a theta here, because it's obviously not on my keyboard. But if you went into your character map and found theta and pasted it in, or you knew the character code for it, then yeah, it would work just fine.
Okay, great. All right, and looks like it was asked that on your plots, would they still continue on if you didn't specify the units? I think what they're referring to is if you didn't reissue the units in the new unit field, will Mathcad continue to compute it as it did in 15?
So, in this case, x, if I evaluate x, let me see. So x is some type of length here, length of the beam. So if I evaluate it, we have a range variable that all has length variables. So if I were to try to plot this without any units, since it has units, Mathcad is going to automatically add the default unit for length in this case, since x is a length. If I divided it by m, I'm going to label that as a unit, that's an acceptable way of doing things, and it would just look exactly like this. So it would just be pure numbers, no units. I wouldn't recommend it. I would always recommend using units where Mathcad has units, but the actual value here is not going to change in either event.
That's good to know. All right. Looks like we got two more in the queue. The first being is whether or not Prime 3.1 has built-in spell check.
That one gets me. It does not have a built-in spell checker.
Get me too. And then there was also a question about our work with textbook authors as far as Mathcad consultants. In other words, do we work with some of the third-party textbook authors? They put out a lot of those help books for Mathcad. Do we work with them as consultants?
They don't. We do have relationships with some authors that do, some engineering textbooks that use Mathcad as in part of their publishing and content development work. So yes, I wouldn't say we're partners or we have relationships with all of them. There are many textbooks built on and around Mathcad, but yeah, we do have some relationships with some of them, yeah.
Okay, great. And then another one came in regarding the e-learning, so I'll go ahead and answer that. So Mathcad e-learning is not included with the perpetual license of Mathcad or the locked subscription license. We do have an option that it could be packaged together. We sell it as a standalone unit, or if you go with a floating Mathcad subscription license, we can get you a license included in that as well. All right. That looks like that's the majority of the questions that had rung in. We're running a little late on time here, so I'll just want to touch a few bases before we let everyone go. So thank you all for attending today. We'll allow this recording to, we'll pass this recording out to everyone. Any questions that do cycle through that we didn't get a chance to get to, we'll correspond via email. And then, please feel free. We sent out a survey, and we'll send out another survey reflecting on what we'd like to do for a follow-up webcast. So if you could take a few minutes just to fill that out, let us know what you think and what you'd like to see. Besides that, I'd like to thank Tim. Thank you for your time. Everyone else, thank you for attending. Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions you have. Thank you very much, everybody.